Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became the father of the Arc family part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. He was burning. Everything was burning. Everyone. You just couldn't give up, Naruto. Goodbye, my friend. Panting harshly, the young man woke from the darkness of his nightmare with a start. Blue eyes burst open, wide and frantic. Mind racing, heart hammering in his chest, he struggled to make sense of what he'd just seen and failed miserably. A muddy brown ceiling swam overhead, blurring indistinctly as he blinked spots away from his bleary vision. He tried to move and regretted it at once. Pain, fire, agony, burning. Searing heat burned through his irises, shot straight into his head and skittered about in his skull like a bunch of drunken spiders. He grit his teeth against it with a groan. In his frenzy, he closed his eyes against the light. Where was it coming from? And tried to roll over, hoping that would make things better. Mistakes were made. A strangled hiss tore from his throat as his entire body convulsed. If there had been pain before then, this was agony. Gasping, he tried to turn on his other side. His skin didn't like that one bit. Every muscle in his body clamped down in unison, his body frantically trying to defend itself against this unseen attack. Everything hurt. He could barely think. Breathing itself became a physical act of will on his part. He nearly blacked out, such was the strain. All right. He paused, trying to think. No sudden movements. With infinite care, he opened his eyes again and balked at what he found there. Not at the room itself. It was bare enough, brown walls to match the ceiling and floor, a nightstand bearing a single lamp, and near it, a worn photograph of a family he didn't recognize. There was a window, but someone had drawn the curtains across it. Judging by the lack of light, he assumed it was night. No, the room didn't frighten him in the least. It was the state of his body that alarmed him. When he looked down, he found himself in a bed of some sort propped up by pillows, his form haphazardly swathed in white linen bandages. What little skin he could see was an awful bruised, burned, and blackened mess. His once stylish black and orange trousers were matted with dry blood, slash marks, and burns of some sort. The kind one might get from fire. Or lightning. Heart pounding in his chest, he tried to move his limbs. His fingers twitched, his toes curled. With that, he released a breath he hadn't even realized he'd been holding. Good, not paralyzed, then. Just in an awful lot of pain. Whiskered cheeks pinched in a scowl. Even that caused his body to ache. Trapped, he could only glare at the ceiling. Just how badly had he been hurt? And by what, or who? He couldn't remember. His head ached in the worst of ways. The thought distressed him further still. He tried to prop himself up on his elbows, only for his arms to buckle beneath a wave of weakness. His head struck the pillows, and this time, an aggravated growl escaped him. Damn it. Had his voice always been that weak? It was barely a whisper. Just as well too, because the door creaked open and a young woman clad in a rough blue tunic and black breeches swept in, humming softly to herself. She cradled a tray of some sort in her hands, and his gaze narrowed upon it, noticing the glass of water, a bowl of broth, and a roll of bandages delicately balanced atop the thin metal plate. Even in his thirst, the young man noticed things about her. She didn't notice him at first, much less realize his eyes were open. But he noticed her. Could he not? Wasn't like he could do anything else. Hers was a lean yet lovely visage, marred only by the faintest birthmark upon her left cheek, golden hair not unlike his wound into a loose braid that fell over one shoulder. She moved with a surety and grace that seemed vaguely familiar, but caught in the bleary daze that he was, the young man found he couldn't quite place it. One look at her confirmed his suspicions. Her arms were well toned, hinting at the muscle beneath. There was a sword belted to her hip too, suggesting she at least had some weapons training. Still asleep, are we? She spared him a brief fretful glance, not noticing his half-lidded eyes as she bumped the door shut with her hip. No surprise, I suppose. Time to change your bandages. This close, he could see hers. They were the most piercing shade of green he'd ever seen. Such a strange color. He could stare at them all day. And he would have too, if his mouth hadn't betrayed him. Cracked lips parted. I hear you. She heard him and pivoted with a yelp, dropping the tray with a clatter. You're awake. The young man opened his mouth to speak again, but here at last words failed him. Only a groan emerged. Oh, right, you must be thirsty. She glanced to the fallen tray and hastily scooped it up, but both the water and broth were sadly a loss. Blast it, stay right there, I'll be right back. Quick as a flash, she flung herself out into the hall. Ha, he heard her holler as she ran, voice slipping into an odd accent. He's up, call the doctor. A distant clamor upstairs caught the man's attention, followed by a decidedly sleepy, but gruff voice. I'll fetch him myself. Keep the lad awake. Not 3 seconds later the young maiden returned, bearing a tall, cold glass of water in one hand and a damp towel in another. Blue Eyes regarded it like the sweetest ambrosia. She saw it and dared a smile. Here you go. The whiskered warrior tried to reach for it. He really did. His right hand made it halfway before another bout of pain racked his back. His shoulders clenched and his body failed him. He tried to snarl, but it emerged as little more than a weak whine. He was better than this. He knew he was, so why couldn't he move? Thankfully, his fellow blonde heard him and acted, bless her soul. She glided the rest of the way and sat down beside him on the bed. The mattress creaked only a little beneath her weight. Drink slowly, now. The green-eyed girl it to his lips, but didn't tip it back. Jade orbs met azure. You haven't had anything to eat or drink in quite some time. He dared a nod, grimacing against the throbbing in his spine, and did as he was bade. She tipped it back and he sipped slowly, not quite trusting his body to keep even that down. Incredibly, it did. Only once he'd polished off the last of the glass did he trust himself to speak. How long was I? You've been asleep for 3 days. 3. No wonder he felt so weak. We didn't think you were going to make it. Our doctor did all he could for you, but you just wouldn't wake up. When his brow furrowed, she flailed her arms and hastened to explain. Not that I thought you wouldn't. But you were just so still and cold, and oh God, babbling again guarantee. His world was starting to blur again. He squinted and shoved back the haze before sleep could take him again. Strangely enough, her bedside manner actually tore a smile from him. Just a little one. It's fine. He croaked the words. Who are you? Me. The faintest flush touched his savior's face as she leaked back. I'm Juniper. Juniper Ark. Juniper. He cemented the name into his memory. That, at least, he wouldn't forget. His gaze slipped to the bowl of broth she'd recovered. It was still half full. Then he glimpsed another plate left upon a nearby dresser, and the half-eaten turkey sandwich on it. Her own meal, no doubt. She'd likely left it there while he was asleep. A low growl pushed through his stomach. The loaf of bread she'd left on the dresser. Juniper caught him staring and frowned. No. She flicked his forehead gently. No, no, no. Absolutely not. You're much too weak for solid food right now. Your stomach won't be able to handle it. Blue eyes flashed. Green narrowed in challenge. She crossed both arms beneath her bosom and huffed. Still he frowned at her. Juniper remained unfazed. You may have some of the broth, she said archly, provided you're able to keep it down. But no solid food, not yet. In the end he was forced to yield to her. She knew it, too, the cheeky minx. Juniper dipped a spoon into the watery broth, ladled some out, and held it before his lips. You know, her words took on a lilting edge. I always wanted to do this. Say he was beginning to think this girl was a bit touched in the head. But he was hungry, and he complied. Despite the pain in his, well, everything, the whiskered warrior forced himself to eat. Really wasn't bad broth, and besides, he was hungry. Now if only his throat didn't feel like it was on fire. We found you on the outskirts of town. When he was sated, Juniper leaned forward, pressing the cool cloth he'd seen earlier to his forehead. It helped more than she knew. You were badly hurt. Do you remember anything? He should. Shouldn't he? When he reached for the space where his memories ought to be, he found only a gaping void. Nothing. Not even his name. With it came a vague sense of loss. As though he'd forgotten something terribly important. His brow furrowed in concentration, and his reward was a fresh jolt of pain in his skull. He grit his teeth against it, but the pain came harder. Harsher. Heaver. It smothered him now, swaddling his every thought in a cottony haze. Darkness swarmed in. He tried to push it back. He really, truly did. But his body betrayed him. Against his will, his eyelids began to droop. Juniper saw it and peeled the wet cloth from his forehead with practiced care. Perhaps she was a nurse, or studying to be one. It went into a basin at the floor he'd not noticed before, was soaked again, and from there gently reapplied to his face. His warm skin protested at the cool cloth at first, but this proved a pleasant ache, a distraction from the all-consuming pain and itchiness that tugged at his body. Belatedly, he wondered if he had a fever. Certainly felt like it. Then she went to work on his bandages. He tried not to look tired. Are we? Juniper made small talk as she worked, distracting him from the blistered skin and half-healed wounds. Bless her. I'm not surprised. Feel free to sleep if you like. Panic had him shaking his head. Don't want to. You're okay. She soothed him. I think you're past the worst of it now, and none of your wounds look to be infected. It's going to be all right. You're going to be all right. She reached out slowly, carefully, and touched his head. Firm fingers ran across his scalp, gently touching his soot-caked hair. Everything will be all right. Her voice was light in laughter and life, and it soothed the ragged edges of his fractured mind. You can sleep now. I'll still be here when you wake up. Would he? He wasn't sure. It was so tempting to close his eyes and drift away into his dreams, but fear reared its ugly head. He'd slept for 3 days already. He couldn't remember anything, anyone. Everything ached. It felt like someone had taken sandpaper to his very soul. How long would it be until he woke again? What if he didn't? What if he passed away in his sleep? Terror clawed at him. He didn't want to die. He might not remember much of anything, but even a man with no memories wanted to live. His tongue betrayed him. Promise. Of course. She dared a giggle. Don't you know? An arc never goes back on their word. I'll even hum you a lullaby. Would you like that? ... Quote. Juniper preened in the face of his confusion. He. That sunny smile flitted out again. Surprised. I normally use my semblance for shouting and knocking things down, but it has other uses, too. He didn't have the strength to argue further. Juniper smiled, accepting his silence for what it was. She touched one hand to her chest, closed her eyes and began to hum softly under her breath. Her voice rose and fell in a soft, nameless tune he didn't recognize. There were no words for it. Just gentle music. It soothed him, though he tried to resist. Whatever it was, it felt stronger than a simple tune. There was something behind it. Nothing malevolent, but powerful nonetheless. Believe in me, it seemed to say. You have nothing to fear here. I will tend your wounds and offer you succor. You are safe. I promise. He couldn't help it. He went under. 3 frantic questions filled his mind as he spiraled back into the black. What happened to me? Where the hell am I? And then, finally, who am I? As he slipped under, he felt Juniper's hand touch his, her thumb slipping under his palm and caressing it gently. Such a simple gesture. It was just a little confidence. A touch of bravery. A gentle nudge from one soul to another. Neither thought much of it at the time. Why would they? 2 lost souls from 2 different souls. What could possibly come from such a thing? But from that moment, that singular touch of a hand, a simple smile between a healer and her patient, well, legends have been born from less. From that moment on, Remnant would never be the same. Good morning, handsome. Juniper Arc swept into her patient's room with tray in hand and a sunny smile that she felt deep in her soul. And why shouldn't she smile? The sun was shining. The birds were chirping. The weekend was here. Better yet, her patient was improving. His treatment had proven slow at first, but he'd made a marked improvement over the last few weeks. Why, at this rate, he'd probably be walking in a few days. From there it wouldn't be long. He was well on the road to recovery. Still smiling, she set her tray down on a nearby dresser and turned to face him. How are we feeling, Tota Aaa, and where did he go? Wide eyes beheld the bed where Ansel's newest patient should be, only to find a vacant space in his place. Someone had tidied up the neat little cot with painstaking care. All that remained was a lone piece of paper, a tiny folded note really laid upon the quilted covers. Nothing more. Juniper steeled herself as she reached for it, fingers fumbling against the worn parchment. A lone line of dialogue awaited her within. Outside, as if to echo that very statement, an explosion shook the house. Her gaze traveled to the window at the end of the hall only to find it open. What's he doing out and about? It's barely been a month, for crying out loud. Smoothing her skirts, she stormed to the open window, vaulted it, and stalked out after him. 0.0.0.0. It was amazing what a bit of rest could do. Apparently her patient agreed, because Juniper Arc found the young man flinging himself through a series of exercise that the human body simply shouldn't be capable of. Least of all in his state. Nearly from the waist up, most of his torso sheathed in bandages, he nevertheless cut an intimidating figure in the early morning light as he ranged about the yard. A tan fist cut through the air like a powerful piston, shedding droplets of sweat as it went. Even as they flew away he whirled and kicked out at the air, creating a violent gust of wind that had fall leaves tumbling from the trees. His heel slammed down, scattering them in a violent stomp to crater the earth underfoot. And just what do you think you're doing? Juniper stilled, the angry retort falling still on her lips. She watched him whirl, saw blue eyes ablaze with gold, and wondered what the change meant. Was it a semblance of some sort? Maybe. Didn't feel like a semblance. Whatever the case, he moved like a born warrior, not one of Ansel's militia or a Vale soldier. Was he a huntsman? She'd always wanted to meet one, but no, something told her he wasn't. He didn't have a weapon on him for one, and that style seemed more self-taught than anything the academies taught. Among other things, her gaze drifted a little lower. Good lords, you could grind meat on those. Still he fought on, launching his body upright into an impossibly fast combination. His body blurred, striking out at an imaginary opponent. Well, now, Juniper tilted her head to watch the show, eyes half-lidded as her patient went through his next kata. He's well fit ga. No, bad brain. You barely know him. Without word or warning, his right arm swung back, cradling a strange sphere of white light within one palm. Bandaged fingers curled around it and wind picked up, which in turn caused the sphere in his hand to swell and bulge like some living thing, pulsing larger for each second he held it. Blades of wind burst from the edge, wickedly sharp, to circle the sphere. Juniper stepped back, terribly alarmed by the sight. She'd never seen the like before in all her life. With a triumphant cry her fellow blonde leapt into the air and let it fly, hurling it high into the skies. It wheeled away with a faint hum, traveled for another moment and then THOOM. Although the subsequent explosion detonated high above their heads, Juniper felt it rattle her teeth nonetheless. Wind lashed down at the earth to tear at her face and hair. She squinted up at it. In the skies above a stray cloud simply ceased to be, evaporating beneath the sheer force of the blast. She touched one hand to her mouth. Amazing. Her patient displayed no such awe. He crashed down, alighted upon the ground in a pointed crouch and touched a hand to his forehead. Gold eyes shimmered back into true blue as he surveyed his handiwork. A boyish smile creased whiskered checks. Into the sun. She was still staring at him and he, into the sky when he spoke. I'm sorry. Though his voice was low, no doubt still recovering from scorched lungs, it remained a far cry from the pitiful rasp he'd previously possessed. I didn't mean to scare ya. Heat rose to Juniper's cheeks. In an instant she was well aware of how she must look, her hair down, still wet from her bath, cheeks red as a rose. She looked down, alarmed to find her fingers wrapped around the hilt of her sword. Her knuckles were white. Juniper peeled her hand free slowly, taking a moment to suppress her fear. Only then did she dare speak. I could ask you the same thing. She sidled up to him. What are you doing out and about? House was getting stuffy. He didn't look away from the sky, didn't even seem to register her presence. Couldn't stand it anymore. Was that what he thought Ansel was? A prison? The insinuation stung a little. It's not your fault. His hand moved a little, covering his eyes and the emotion within. I'm just restless. I'm sorry, too. She touched a hand to his arm and tried to soothe him. I didn't realize you were that agitated. Her patient pivoted to face her, moving. Ain't your fault. In an instant Juniper she saw his, well, face in full profile without the bandages nor his hand to block them. He wasn't completely healed yet, but he looked a damn sight better than before. Those burns may well vanish in a few weeks, but the scars would never truly fade. But none of that mattered now, because he was smiling. Forget being well fit. This guy was handsome. Not the pretty boy handsome of a mode, but the rough grace of someone who knew how to fight. He almost looked human again, and dare she say, happy to see her. Her heart did a silly little flip in her chest as 1,000 voices cried out in unison. Target acquired. Forward. Ho. Juniper planted both hands on her hips and shook the giddy surge away, and felt some of her earlier concern return. Now listen here, Mr. Naruto, he muttered, still not sounding quite sure of himself. My name is Naruto. I'm starting to remember things again. Bits and pieces. That sort of thing. All right, Naruto. You're not fully healed. Ah, don't interrupt. She slashed a hand through the air when he tried to speak. I don't care how strong you are. You can't just go rampaging about the yard like that. Aura or not, you'll open your wounds back up and... The hell is aura? Juniper blinked in surprise. I beg your pardon. Aura. Her fellow blonde squinted at her like a curious fox. Never heard that word before. Bright eyes snapped to his. Are you joking? His frown grew. No. Funny how one words can shatter your worldview. Junpire's reality turned itself on its head. He didn't know what aura was. That couldn't be right. Everyone knew about aura. Everyone. From the fiercest fighters to the humblest of farmers. Men and women were taught about it from birth. It was a staple of education everywhere. Right, he was having her on. Had to be. Very funny. She huffed, tossing her hair over one shoulder. Next you'll tell me ya don't know what a grim is. Ha, yeah, right. An innocent blink answered her forced laughter, one wholly devoid of subterfuge or guile. Oh dear. That wasn't good. Had he cracked his skull that badly? You're worse off than I thought. Her hand tightened around his. Maybe we should get you to a hospital. When he stiffened, she hastened to explain. They could run some tests, take a few X-rays. His blue eyes went glassy with fear for reasons she couldn't understand. They'll be able to help you better than I can, see if there's anything wrong. He shrugged her hand off. No, Naruto croaked the word, growling at his still recovering voice. No hospitals, no needles. He shuddered, clutching his arms tight to his chest. No tests. I'm fine. I'm happy here. An alarm went off in the back of Juniper's head. She lowered her voice and spoke anew, trying to soothe his stress with her semblance. Her gift was a versatile one, but even she had her limits. She could shout with unrelenting force, spit fire when she was angry, rip weapons from an attacker's hand with merely a snarl, yet she couldn't control people. She could only give them a nudge in the right direction. In the end, the choice would always be their own. Naruto, happy doesn't mean healthy. His eyes flashed red, gone even as she gasped. I said no. Juniper felt oddly pleased by his stubbornness. Still, something nagged at her. But, I am fine. He looked back to her at the last, chagrined by his outburst. Look, so long as I have chakra, I'll heal. Nothing to worry about. Chakra what now? Quite suddenly, it was Juniper's turn to balk. She didn't know that word herself. You're not making any sense. For the love of... Naruto threw his hands into the air. Now you're being weird. Chakra is chakra. Her forehead pressed against his. Well, I've never heard that word before. Naruto pushed right back. And I ain't heard of aura. Green eyes met blue. Sparks flew. Juniper reeled back first. Naruto wasn't acting like he had a cracked skull. She'd seen the signs, and he displayed none of them. When the possible ceased to make sense, when all logic fell by the wayside, why, one was left with the impossible. The absurd, the fantastical, and what she'd just seen back there, that vicious display, the way he'd copied himself, well. At what point did the impossible become possible? Amnesiac or no, he was spouting things she knew next to nothing about. Her mind leapt to an incredible conclusion. Juniper arc-steeled herself, stomped a boot once for courage, and took the plunge. You're not from around these parts, are ya, Naruto? Naruto scratched the back of his head. No, he managed, sounding quite sad indeed. I don't think I am. Where am I from? Juniper's mouth opened, closed. She couldn't find the words. For all the strength and courage she'd seen earlier, in this moment he reminded her of a small animal, one that had been kicked one too many times. It didn't matter that he was a good head taller than her, not his size, nor his strength, any of it. He could likely bend her over his knee and tan her hide like a little girl, even kill her, but here, in this moment, she felt no fear. Instead, she did what anyone would do, she offered him her hand. We'll find out together. Naruto dithered only a moment. You're still going to help me? After all this time, I can't pay you or anything. Well, it's like my pa always says. Juniper grinned up at him and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ears, green eyes bright and intent. If you do a job, do it right. An arc never goes back on their word. And it was true, because pa would absolutely tan her hide if she ever left a stranger in need. Still, Naruto needn't know that. You help me, I'll help you. Sound fair? A blonde brow quirked. How the heck can I help you? Her eyes sparkled. Teach me how to do what you did. I wanna be able to move like that. He reached out and clasped her hand. His fingers twined within hers. Thanks. You don't know what this means to me. With that smile, Juniper felt something flutter in his chest. A quickening of her pulse that she'd never known. It was in that moment, this precise sliver of a second, that their fates were sealed. Looking back, well, Juniper certainly didn't regret it. Not one bit. 0.0.0.0. Well, there you have it. Time moved on, flowing like wind. Days became weeks, weeks became months. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, years passed. And that, my little dear, well, that's how I met your mother. 0.0.0.0. Freedom. A young girl clambered across an open yard with a cry of childlike glee. Bare feet tore through long blades of grass as she darted to and fro, unfettered by concern or any restraint. A pale cream sundress whirled around her ankles like a ballroom gown, threatening to trip her at any moment, but she didn't pause. She ran without fear, without pause, without hesitation, without so much as a care in the world. She was invincible, after all. Saffron Arc. A familiar voice shouted at her back. You get back here right now. The lass risked a glance over her shoulder at her pursuer. Bright blue eyes beamed at him, framed by sunny hair and faintly whiskered cheeks. Rather than obey, she simply dropped to her haunches and tensed her legs in preparation of her next Herculean feat. Light flashed as her every muscles tensed. Her pursuer saw it and swore aloud. Don't you dare. His warning came too late. You'll never take me alive. With a single bound accompanied by a singular joyous whoop, the girl soared into the clouds. Gravity yanked at her slim shoulders, to no avail. It wasn't so much flight not yet, as a single mighty leap. Still she rocketed upwards, arms at her sides, eyes wide and tearing against the wind. A flock of startled geese saw her and wheeled out of the way with a chorus of angry honks. Sorry, she hollered the words over her shoulder. I'll be more careful next. He forgot how to land. Momentum finally had its say, sending her hurtling to the ground like a pale comet from heaven with a shriek. But only for a moment. Arms flailing, legs kicking, she tumbled in the air with frightful grace for one so young and righted herself at the last moment. Shock jarred up her feet with a mighty crunch as she landed in a rocky hillside, forcing her to steady herself in a pointed crouch. And she sticks the landing. She sprang upright and hopped in place, flinging her arms into the air. The crowd goes wild. She cupped both hands to her cheeks and mimed a shout. Ah, thank you very much. She was still making noises when she heard father shout for her. Sapphron. A dull thud signaled his own landing. You were in so much trouble, young lady. Uh-oh. She pivoted on one heel and bolted in the other direction toward her final destination. Gotta dash. Undeterred by the shouts of her parents, she sprinted off again, skipping from one stone to another, kicking off a fence before sprint towards, then up a tree. Gravity tugged at her once more and once more she ignored it wholeheartedly, running up the weathered oak at a dead sprint. In a matter of moments, it was over. Her objective reacted, the girl sprawled out over an impressive bough with a happy sigh. Alas, her moment of triumph was short-lived. Aha! Found her. Below her, she heard a dull crash. Then someone placed one hand to the tree's worn bark and pitched their voice to be heard. Saphron Arc. Get down here, young lady. You scared your mother half to death with that stunt of yours. Boo, spoilsport. She just wanted to race. She was tired of being cooped up in the house. But daa Addy. She grinned down at him from the tree, legs swinging against the branch. Look, I walked up here all by myself. And, her father quirked a brow. Can you walk back down? Sure she could, if she wasn't feeling so, well, woozy all of a sudden. Okay, maybe she'd gone a little too fast after all. She struggled to sit up, but the last of her reserves failed her. Her sheepish expression became telling. Help, Naruto sighed and climbed up after her. What am I going to do with you? She beamed down at him, full of clever little wit. Spoil me rotten. A pall of silence fell between father and daughter alike. And then, afterwards, don't tell your mother. Then he grabbed her and leapt. Best dad ever. Juniper's children were strong. No, stronger than strong. They were powerful. Little Saffron had taught her that lesson when she lifted a boulder at the tender age of 6. Who could do that? She could leap tall building in a single bound and run like the wind, so much so that it fell to Naruto just to catch her when she ran off. And she did, often. Honestly, it wasn't even her semblance. On a certain level that should have made Juniper worry. She didn't. Left to raise such children alone, she might have. But she wasn't alone, so why worry? Every mother wanted their babies to live happy, healthy lives. And they would. Saffron had been but the first. After her came Sabrina, born with piercing violet orbs and whiskered cheeks. Then Sable, a girl with striking silver eyes. Really, even she was starting to see a theme there. The letter S seemed all too prominent. Even now she watched the three of them play, though their definition of the word was somewhat stilted. They were still trying to get those bells from their father's belt. Even now they chimed softly as he evaded them, clinking in the air as grasping hands tried and failed to tear the silver ornaments from their crimson strings. Naruto weaved among them with supernatural ease. It was a wild waltz that could only be conceived by an utter madman, a series of sharp twists and turns that ended as quickly as they began. Stranger still, the girls were laughing. Get him, I've got his arm. Somebody get his legs. Naruto slapped down a smoke bomb, throwing off their vision and sending them shrieking for cover. Remember, he called into the haze, it's only natural that the strongest should lead, but the goal should be strength, not necessarily leadership. She heard a yelp as he caught one of the girls. If one is truly strong, leadership comes inevitably as such. Sable went sprawling out of the cloud and sprawled flat on the ground. You need to work together to catch me. Nothing less will do. Naruto was a gentle father. He could have beaten them down and taught them a lesson, but instead chose a softer touch. Aha! Saffron clapped her hands and banished the fog with a wind jutsu, only to find Naruto right in her face. A single tap served as a reminder of death, painless, but sharp enough to teach them a lesson all the same. Dead. His finger tapped Saffron between the shoulders, unbalancing their eldest. Arg, she rounded on him. With a hiss. Dead, Naruto sang. Dead. Sabrina jerked back, massaging her head with a whine. Dead, dead, dead. Sable slammed a fist into the ground, splintering the earth. The near miss sent her sister stumbling. Girls. Juniper raised her voice and flared her semblance, claiming their attention. Be careful, don't hurt each other. A faint kick low in her torso claimed her attention. Again, Juniper touched a hand to her round belly with a small smile. The child within stirred at her touch and kicked anew. This next one would finally a boy. She knew it in her heart of hearts. She wasn't quite sure how she knew, only that she did. She had a feeling about him. 0.0.0.0. Sometimes Naruto wondered how it all happened. Sometimes it felt like fate was mocking him. And other times, he just found it funny. He'd never thought he would fall in love. And yet he had undoubtedly fallen for Juniper. Hook, line and sinker. He hadn't meant to be a father. Fate had other plans. Little Saffron was born only a year after their marriage. He definitely didn't plan to have many after her, but he loved the little buggers and everyone that followed her. He certainly didn't expect their children to be so powerful, let alone give him a run for his money, and yet here they were, putting him through the ringer. With familiar techniques, no less. Rasengan. A quick sidestep took him out of harm's way as a tiny body swiped past. It snapped, snapping him back to reality, and he whistled a little as his daughter missed. Her hand slammed down into the space he'd occupied, her jutsu grinding the ground to fine powder. His girls were good, very good. He'd seen more than enough jutsu in his lifetime to impart the basics to them. From they'd taken his each and every lesson, then run with, Dee lapped up all the techniques he'd taught them and made them their own. Their reaction speed was on point. Rather scary, considering they weren't even adults yet. Very good, he applauded Saffron's attempt. You've almost got the hang of it. Again, his eldest straightened with a huff, burst down her blue jeans, and pushed a strand of blonde hair out of her eye. Hold still and let me hit you. Whiskered cheeks twitched into a smile. Wouldn't be much of a lesson if I did that now, would it? As the eldest of his merry little brood, Saffron was the eldest and by far the strongest. Her punches left bruises. In terms of sheer strength, she might have given Tsunade herself a run for her money someday. But for now, she was just a child. And children made far too many mistakes. Case in point, Rarg. When she dove at him, he caught her by the wrist and flung her over the shoulder. She sailed away into the trees with an outraged yelp and a crackle of aura. They both knew she'd be back. A little tussle through a tree or three wasn't enough to keep an arc down. Next, he called. Not a beat later, Sable slammed into his left arm and latched on like a limpet. Ha, she crowed, preening up at him in her triumph. I got you, so you do. Naruto lifted his arm but she clung on with surprising tenacity, like the child she was. His daughter grinned back at him, legs dangling in the air. But now what? He a brow at her. You trapped one of my arms, but I still have another. See, he wiggled the fingers of his right hand. What do you plan to do now that you've caught me? What's your brilliant scheme? I'm sure you have one. Violet blue eyes narrowed as her tan face grew pale. I didn't really think I'd get this far. The other brow rose. Well, you know what comes next. Sable whimpered. Daddy. No, Daddy. Yes. His arm shot up. Have a nice flight. Dog. She shot into the clouds with a shriek. Naruto watched her go with a grin. All right, now where's your twin? His ears twitched, for the keening sound of 1,000 chirping birds was his only warning. Blue eyes bulged. Honed instinct shifted his center mass to the right, allowing a wild blur of red and orange to hurtle past. A glowing length of chakra chains hooked around his ankle and yanked as she flew by, trying to reel him for a second strike. He caught it and yanked, hauling them forward instead. His reward was a startled yelp, followed by a shock of red hair as his attacker tumbled to the floor. Sabrina, he clicked his tongue in admonishment, what have I told you about using Chidori in family spars? She struggled up to a knee. To not to, but it's the only way I can hit you anymore. And most people can't recover from a hole in their torso. Drop it. Her arm lowered. The sparks fell. Okay, Papa, honestly, Sasuke would be rolling in his grave if he knew he'd passed down this technique. He took some bitter pleasure in that. He might not be able to use it himself, but he'd watched Kakashi train often enough to understand the basics. And his girls were oh so clever. A jutsu like this was not quite as safe for someone without the Sharingan as he would have liked, but he trusted in their genes. Anyone who knew this trick would have a very nasty surprise for their enemies. And with Sabrina's chains, she could reel her enemy in with ease. Somehow, he had the feeling Kakashi would approve. Come on, don't sulk. Here. He reached down and pulled the sullen girl to her feet. Let's wait for your sisters, then we can continue. Sabrina was the odd girl out among the trio. Unlike her blonde siblings, she'd been blessed with flowing red hair and striking silver eyes unlike any other. Moreover, the pale pallor of her skin was a striking contrast to that of her twin. A more paranoid man might have thought Juniper had an affair. Nope, not him. Red hair ran in the Uzumaki bloodline, after all. So did chakra chains, and whiskered cheeks. She was their daughter, through and through. Anyone who said otherwise would be spitting teeth. Kushina would have loved her. Juniper liked name her girls with the letter S, it seemed. Thus far, he hadn't fought her on it. Far be it from him to argue with a pregnant woman. So long as she didn't go naming anyone, Sasuke, or Sakura, he didn't much mind. Still, there were some lines, painful lines, that he wasn't willing to cross. Assuming they ever had a boy, he was leaning toward the name. John. Speaking of which, got you. Naruto looked up and snagged Sable out of the air as she came crashing down, spun to bleed off her momentum, then swung her onto his shoulders. That was awesome. Her grin outshone the sun itself. Lithe legs kicked against his shoulders with thinly veiled glee. Again. Again. Maybe when we visit the beach. He grinned as an exhausted Saffron stumbled back into the clearing, covered in mud and dirt. I'll take turns throwing you into the water. How does that sound? They went absolutely mad. Yes. All right. Dibs on first. Naruto laughed and drew them into a warm embrace. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. This was his family, his life, his love, his heart. These girls had brought him happiness in a way he'd never known before. Whatever he might have been in his world, none of that mattered anymore. He was happy here. No matter what came, he would protect them. He would teach them to be strong, and keep them safe from the horrors of this world and all that it threw their way. If someone hurt them, they would suffer. If anyone broke their hearts, death would come for them. And if anyone sought to use or abuse them, you guessed it, they would die screaming. 0.0.0.0. Take the girls. Blue eyes snapped open with a hiss. Juniper stirred beside him. Dreams again. He shook his head. Just another nightmare. It's nothing. She shifted a little in bed, pulling him close. Then let me distract you, dear. Her mouth melded with his as she pulled him back to warm sheets in her waiting embrace. And time wound by once again, like so many leaves in the wind. Almost before Naruto knew it, he had a son. 0.0.0.0. Sword met fist on a moonlit night. Contrary to Naruto's expectations, the impact actually rattled his arm a little. Lightning dust shot raced up the length of his arm, loosening the muscles there to turn what should have been a devastating blow into merely a powerful one. It wasn't enough to stop him. Rather than risk a retreat, he reached out and grabbed the blade before him, uncaring as the edge bit into his palm. Blood bubbled between his fingers. He grit his teeth against it and pulled. A quick yank hauled his attacker forward, even as he lashed out with his free palm, Rasengan in hand. Yet another Rasengan met it head-on. As one the twin spheres clashed, large and small smashing against one a keening whine of chakra. Dirt and debris sprayed into the air. Wind lashed at them, kicking up a mighty gale. Wide blue eyes met azure orbs across the way, narrow and intent. For a moment his foe held their ground, face intent with strain. But only for a moment. Alas, their clash didn't last. Son yielded to father and gave ground as they were overpowered. Brave of you, boy. Naruto grinned down at his attacker as he inched closer to victory. I would have thought you learned your lesson by now. What can I say? John matched his smile, blue eyes alight, whiskered cheeks dimpling in a grin that showed only a hint of pain. I'm a slow learner. He really wasn't. He'd taught him better than that. John Ark's son was no longer a boy anymore, but neither was he quite a man. Not yet. Caught somewhere between the gangling stage of puberty and adolescence, he nevertheless held himself well. Although his ripped blue jeans were spotted with dirty sweat and his orange tee a torn tattered mess, he conducted himself with strength and pride. As expected of an Ark. He did not expect his son to let go of the short sword. His son stifled the Rasengan in his hand and released the blade, causing him to overbalance as he broke the clash. For a wild moment, Naruto found himself pleasantly surprised. Then there was pain. In a single seamless movement John drew a second sword from the scabbard, twisted his blade aside, and brought it crashing down at his shoulder with a whirl of light. Crocea Morse slammed it into his collarbone, slid off and kept going, sundering soil like so much glass. The earth ruptured with the sheer force of the striking, physically spitting flame. Naruto sputtered in a rare moment of surprise, hacking and coughing, briefly blind in the haze that followed. John's voice chased him through the smokescreen. How'd you like my new secret move? Not bad. Naruto rubbed his eyes as he peered into the smoke. This would be easier if you just used your shadow clones. Never. The retort was immediate. I wanna beat you fair and square. Fine, have it your own way. He dropped the act, raised a hand, then stabbed it behind him. And I still see you. Rasengan. A boyish yelp answered him as his son spun away. By contrast, he'd held back this time. His jutsu banished the smokescreen and smashed John down into a tree, but no more. At full power a Rasengan could shred through ore like butter. It barely winded his only son. It showed too, because the boy didn't look much pleased as he climbed back to his feet. And that, my boy, Naruto hummed, is why we never let our guard down. Still, a glimmer of hope broke through his son's anger. I managed to hit you back there. That's gotta count for something, right? It does. Naruto grit his teeth to hide a scowl when his progeny smiled. But I already told you, you'll have to beat me before I let you become a huntsman. We've been over this. But I'm strong. His boy bulled upright, stabbing Crocea Morse into the ground to lever himself upright. You said so just last week. I said you're strong for someone your age. He raised a finger. There's always someone stronger, John. Stronger than you, maybe. The timeless shinobi shrugged. Even I'm not invincible. His son lunged. A lazy backhand sent him sprawling into the dirt. See, he sighed. You can't beat me when I try. I'm humoring you. John struggled upright again, staggering a little this time. Naruto winced when he saw the blood running from his nose. Blast. He hadn't meant to hit him that hard. We're not like normal people, John. He spoke slowly, trying to make him understand. I haven't aged a day since I met your mother. Hell, a clawed hand scratched the back of his neck. Haven't you noticed she isn't aging all that quickly either? She was normal before I met her. Before they'd been together more times than he could count. Now, she's something more. So are your sisters. And you. They're the same. He held out a hand. We're going to be around for, well, a very long time. It's important that you understand that. But you love Mom. With all my heart. He caught a feint, swept his legs, and drove a fist between his son's ribs. But it doesn't change the fact that our family, is different. People don't like different. Here it was again, the crux of their training, the reason why John was so determined to improve himself. The boy wanted to be a hero. Under any other circumstance Naruto would have happily embraced such a dream. The world needed more heroes. But this world wasn't his. Even he could tell his children were stronger than they should be. Chakra was an amazing thing, but chakra blended with aura, and the miracle of a semblance, that made something new. And the world feared that which it did not understand. John lunged at him. It's my dream. Then it's a stupid dream. He flung up his hands and batted him away with a rush of wind. You'll excel in Beacon, sure, but what happens when you draw attention yourself? To your family. Still, he stood. Then we'll protect them. A muscle jumped in Naruto's jaw. We won't always be here. One spinning kick sent his son flying, only for him to bound up again, sword swinging. Blood sprayed through the air as he caught him with a savage punch. Why are you making me do this? He snarled and flung his son's sword aside. You're fighting so you can watch everyone around you die. Think, John. He tapped a finger to the side of his head. Think, you have so much potential, and you want to waste it like this. Anger reared its head for the first time in an age and he flung his arms into the air. You can't be a huntsman. He caught the blind jab with his offhand, pushed the shield away and stormed after him. Your sisters understand that. Why don't you? He limped to one knee. It's my life. No, it wasn't. You will outlast every fragile insignificant huntsman on this planet. A right hook sent his boy spinning to the ground. You may even live to see this world crumble to dust and blow away. He was still struggling to stand when a kick sent him crashing through a tree. Everyone and everything you know will be gone. What will you have after 500 years? You, Dad. One last time, his progeny stood. Naruto felt his anger gutter out like an empty flame. Cheery blue eyes regarded him. I'll still have you, and Mom, and, he choked a little, and Saffron, and Sable, and Sabrina, and all the rest. This was his boy, his boy. He was beating his own boy for wanting the same things he had. Something ugly coiled in his stomach. What am I doing? If he wants to be a hero, I should be helping him, not hurting him. John knew how to use that sword. Juniper had taught him well, and he'd been practicing for years hence. Even with those injuries, John he fought with poise and grace, weaving a line of steely death before him. No clumsy swings and strikes here. Every move was calculated, each strike poised to inflict maximum damage. Against a huntsman-level foe, he could actually prove a threat. But here, against someone like him, he was woefully lacking, and they both knew it. Damn it. Blue eyes flashed red as he missed again. Stop holding back and fight me like you mean it. Fight me. Fine. Naruto ducked an overhead swipe and settled into a low stance, one hand dragging across the ground. For a moment, just a moment, he reminded John of a wild beast. His entire body glowered golden, eldritch black markings glowing over gleaming shades of saffron. Credit where it was due, his son didn't yield. His shield fanned out and he took a stance, intent to meet him on. Such a brave little son he'd had. Always wanting to be a hero, always willing to go the distance for his dreams. He would do his best not to break him. Remember. He beamed as the last of the cloak crept over him. You asked for this. Then he grinned and launched forward, bounding on the balls of his feet. Brace yourself. John tried. He really, truly did. His shield snapped up and took the blow head on, like the knight he'd always wanted to be. But it wasn't enough. The sheer momentum behind that swing swept up into his guard, forcing it back and out of alignment. As such, he was woefully unprepared for the right hook that caught his chin. Alas, a single swipe sent him flying. Naruto caught him before he could reach terminal velocity. If you want to protect your family, if you want to be a huntsman that badly, you need to be strong. He gave him a hard shake. Stronger than strong. And for that, you need to train. John regarded him with teary eyes. Then you mean, pick up your sword, we have work to do. Hop to it. Their training would continue long into the night. Just a little fear. I worry about that boy, ya know. Juniper stifled a smile against her pillow as she felt her husband stir in bed. Such a fretful man, worrying about their son. Then again, she loved that about him. Anyone who cared enough to fret over their little hoard and stay after the fact was a catch. Anyone who had this many kids and remained faithful despite it all. Well, that was a keeper. Really, they hadn't planned on having this many children, but they hadn't exactly tried to stop either. Not that they would, but her husband was sulking. Best attend to that. I take it his training's going well. She couldn't quite keep the laughter from her words. You wouldn't be complaining otherwise. Too well. Naruto rolled over, revealing his face, and the bruises there. He actually gave me a black eye today. Juniper tried not to laugh when she saw the injury. She really, truly did. It was just too much. A snicker pierced the tranquility of their bedroom. Said snicker became a giggle, then an outright laugh as she doubled over with a merry cackle. She couldn't help herself. Naruto just looked so put out, so unlike his usual calm self, that it simply flipped her switch. Hey, John hits hard these days. It's not that funny. It really is. She wiped a mirthful tear from her eye and cooed as she kissed his injury. Poor baby. Her husband grumbled something beneath his breath but didn't resist as she spooned against him. Their bodies were warm beneath the soft sheets, skin still flushed after making love. Her eyes trailed down the plane of his back, idly admiring the many scars there. Funny how someone so hard-boiled could be an absolute softie when it came to their babies. Such were the ways of parents, she supposed. He's our boy, Juniper. Our only boy. She heard the concern in Naruto's voice, felt the worry for their son even as he spoke. I don't want him to grow up like I did. With a hum, she laid her head against his back. I'd say you turned out all right. TCH. He grunted at her, the surly man. Maybe I did, but I wouldn't wish my childhood on my worst enemy. If John goes out there, he's going to get hurt. Such a stubborn warrior her husband was. He could flatten mountains and make mincemeat out of Grim, but when it came to their children he was weak as any man. Yet he was hers as she was his, and they'd sworn to support one another in all things. Even now, after all these years, she only had eyes for him, and he, her. Pain is a part of life, dear. She shifted a little and turned, allowing the sheets to fall forth from her chest. It helps us grow. He harumphed and tucked his chin over shoulder. I ain't denying that, just don't like it. You may not. She tossed her head, pushing a stray strand of blonde over her shoulder. But you've made a difference here in Ansel. This place was little more than a village when you first arrived. Her fingers traced a low circle just below his throat. Now it's a thriving town. People are happy here. We've protected them, taught them, trained them. Ansel's militia certainly weren't huntsmen, and they'd never be able to use chakra, but they were certainly capable thanks to him. So was she, but that was a story for another time. Maybe so, but we've been noticed. His forehead kissed hers. I already had to turn away visitors last year. They were asking questions. Well, they best scamper off and stay gone. if they knew what was good for them. Their family had gotten by on anonymity thus far, but they knew that wouldn't last forever. A quiet town Ansel might be, but it was a town nevertheless. Word traveled. One could only hide their children's feats for so long before someone talked. And a semblance only explained so much. You said John wants to be huntsman. When she spoke at last, her words echoed into the silence. Did you ever consider why that might be? His brow furrowed. No. Juniper butted her head against his. Such a loving husband she had. Truly, she loved him with all her heart and soul. But he could be so damnably dense sometimes. He could plan a battle strategy like no other, but in the matters of home and hearth he truly amazed her at times. John idolizes you, dear. She pulled Naruto closer and laid a kiss upon his chin. He wants to make you proud. Naruto blinked. Of course I'm proud of John. He's a great son. He knows that. Does he? She looked up at him. Have you said the exact words to him? The silence proved telling. Well, maybe you should. Her hand swatted his bicep. Maybe then he wouldn't be so keen to run off and make a life for himself. Think about it. When he made to protest, she pushed a hand against his lips. His sisters are all so much stronger than him, and you spend more time with them. Give the boy some attention. You're right. At least Saffron and the others don't want to be huntresses. His resolve was weakening, she could just tell. No, of course not. They want to be shinobi, like their daddy. I suppose the superpowers help. They certainly help them avoid being grounded. Their laughter subsided into silence. Naruto broke it first. He's not ready to be a hunter, June. Using her pet name now, was he? Cute, but that wouldn't save him here. And when will he be? She rolled onto his chest, straddling his body with hers. When he's old and gray. Naruto looked away with a rueful glower. Not this year. Darling. A sigh escaped her. I love you, but if that boy waits any longer he'll be too old to attend any of the academies. A hand flicked out to pinch his nose. He's already near the threshold. What's he going to do? Run away? Naruto scoffed. He knows I'd track him down. Clearly they weren't going to get anywhere with this tonight. Enough about John. Come here. In the end she steered the conversation to safer waters, much for his sake as their boy. Juniper pulled him toward her and fastened her mouth to his, then pushed him down into the bed. From there she climbed atop him. The last of the sheets fell away and she took a glorious moment to revel in the way those keen blue eyes roved over her. His hands trailed down her body and settled upon her waist, setting a fresh spark of heat shooting through her heart. She trailed a hand between the valley of her and felt his body stir against hers, hard muscles melding with firm curves. This was always her favorite part. Not simply but the casual foreplay beforehand. These teasing touches, the lingering kisses, the sounds she drew from him as she drew out their pleasure inch by inch. They knew one another well, enough to make each encounter even more thrilling than the last. More than that, being with him for so long, laying together night after night had changed her. Altered the very concept of her DNA. Apparently mind-blowing with a demigod was good for you. Who knew? Not her. Juniper Arc was many things, but she wasn't a fool, and she certainly wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. If by some strange twist of fate she could live a long, happy, healthy life with him, well, that was worth selling her soul. I really do love you. Her eyes flashed as she threaded her fingers within his. Mine. She'd let no one else touch him. And if any hussy tried, well, they'd get a taste of her voice. Her semblance was not to be trifled with and neither was she. As far as distractions went it was a good one. Together they settled into a familiar rhythm. In a matter of moments she quickened for him, her body moving against his in that particularly pleasant way she so loved, and oh gods that really did feel good. The door creaked open not a moment later. Mother. A tiny voice called as a small body poked around the worn frame. Father, are you awake? I had a, oh. Said voice peaked into a gasp. Ew. Juniper tumbled off Naruto and yanked on a white shift, grimacing only a little as her husband yanked on his boxers. Well, at least they'd managed to enjoy themselves, this time. Concealing her frustrations behind a smile, she sat up. Naruto buried his head in a pillow with a long-suffering sigh. Again. Are you all right, Azula? She sat up, fixing her messy hair. Did you have another nightmare? Azula Arc was a strange little thing, by far their strangest and youngest child to be had yet. Her hair was dark as a raven's feathers, her eyes a proud shade of amber. That was Juniper's ancient ancestry at work. Much to her chagrin, someone in her family, several someones, held a similar complexion. Had something to do with their ancestors if Pa was to be believed. In any case, it didn't matter. The faded whisker marks caressing their daughter's cheeks were proof enough of her heritage. As she looked on, their youngest dithered in place, trembling in her red shift. Too proud to admit that she was afraid, yet terrified to turn back the way she'd come in the dark. Anyone could see the way her knees twisted to and fro as she fought the urge to bolt. Even at 7 years of age, she had an ego most children lacked. It made her proud, fragile, fierce, vulnerable. By the brothers, she just wanted to squeeze and squeeze the poor thing until she stopped crying. Juniper opened her arms. Don't cry. Come here, sweetie. Hope gleamed in her amber eyes. Really? Naruto yawned. Of course you can. Their little princess scurried up the bed and into their arms. Her daughter, her child, her blood, family. She would protect them at all costs. 0.0.0.04. John knew those words well. Even as the cry echoed across the yard, he whirled into a ready position and brought his blade to bear. A mighty boulder filled his vision, easily wider than he was tall and thrice as large. Blue eyes bulged in surprise. Such a rock could easily crush him flat, aura or not. His first instinct was to flee, to simply duck back and make use of his superior speed to escape. Run away and live to fight another day. That sort of thing. But running would make him a coward. And he was no coward. Crocea Morse came up, coated in lightning chakra, burning with sparks of azure light. The muscles of his right arm bunched, swelling with chakra. With a roar he stomped one foot into the ground for balance, then cut down at the impending missile. Sparks spat across its tapered tip as it bit down into the stone. Hardened granite parted like water on either side of him as he cut clean through it, leaving the severed halves to crash harmlessly into the grounds. Across the yard, he heard his family cheer him on, his sisters whooping loudly at the feet. As the dust cleared, Naruto dove through it, ripped the sword from his grasp, and forced him into a grapple. Father and son strove against one another for the merest of moments. The latter reared back and delivered a vicious headbutt to the former. John reeled and lost his grip. A clawed hand seized him by the face, slamming him into the ground. A knee slammed into his back, pinning him where he lay. There was no pain. His aura held. An angry blue iris glowered up from the mud. Unbeknownst to him, it blazed red. You're making me angry, Dad. You won't like me when I'm angry. Naruto beamed back, still holding him down. Show me. A low growl emerged from John's throat. Yes, show me. Dad cajoled, grinning from ear to ear. Get angry. Let it all out. Show me how powerful you've become. Be that way, would he? Fine. Then he bucked. An angry thrash threw his father off for the merest of moments. John whirled on him and drove a crushing knee into his ribs, doubling him over. His father was still reeling when he grabbed him by the hair and dragged his face down into a headbutt of his own. A shove broke them apart and sent them stumbling back. Naruto looked up into the teeming light of a giant Rasengan. Oh. He managed eloquently. That's awfully familiar. John brought it crashing down with a snarl. And it was absorbed. Looking back, he wasn't quite sure what happened. 1 minute he was about to win. In the next, Naruto barked a command that sounded an awfully lot like the word release, and for a moment, just a moment, he could have sworn those azure orbs burned violet. There was no time to notice anything else. Without word or warning, the energy of John's jutsu away, turning his charge into a stumbling lurch that carried him well past the Arch-Patriarch. He braced himself for a finishing blow. It never came. That's enough for today. Naruto yielded first, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. You did well. John slammed upright, anger warring with confusion in his heart. How did you do that? Now, let your old man have some secrets. Naruto looked away and seemed to physically struggle with something for a moment. At length, he found his voice. I'm proud of you, son. He turned his gaze back. The look there riveted John where he stood. I always have been. I always will be. And something dark flashed across his face, gone before the young man could make sense of it. I'm sorry if I push you. I just want you to be the best you can be. I think it's high time I told you that. John felt his throat close. How long had he waited to hear those words? Years. And here they were. A small, watery smile graced his whiskered face. A strange feeling bubbled up inside him. Was this what pride felt like? He'd not experienced the like before. For so long he simply thought himself good enough. Not particularly special, the runt of the litter. To hear those words now, they filled a hole in his heart, one hadn't even known to exist. Never in his life had he needed something so badly and never known until he received it. Tomorrow, I'll teach you that jutsu you've been asking about. Joy turned to ashes in John's mouth. Tomorrow. Right. That's great, Dad. Naruto's brow furrowed. You all right, there? Shit. He could sense negative emotions. I'm fine, really. An almighty thunderclap cut the two of them off. Both blondes blanches. Oh, for the love of Jean. Naruto cast his gaze further down the clearing. What did I tell you about using that jutsu? Go on. John dropped to the ground with a little wheeze. I'm just going to lay here for a bit. Well, don't lay around too long. A boot nudged his ribs. You might have another sister by the time you wake up. John winged a stray pebble off his father's head. Just how siblings are you going to give me, old man? Use protection. Naruto absolutely cackled. Now you see, son, when a man loves a woman very much. John clamped both hands over his ears to stifle the talk he knew was coming. La 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 la. I can't hear you. His point gained. Father sauntered away with a merry whistle. John couldn't bring himself to watch, not for long. Not now. He knew there wouldn't be a tomorrow, because today was the day. John knew it in his heart of hearts, because he needed to leave tonight. If he didn't depart this very evening he would never make it to the city in time, let alone on schedule. Never mind Beacon. He'd delayed for too long, dragged his feet these few years in the vain hope of winning his father's approval before he left. And now he had. In the end, it simply wasn't enough. He could land a few blows on Naruto now, he'd even managed to throw him that one time, but the fact remained that dear old dad was well and truly out of his league. He'd held the lion's share of his strength back all this time. And yet today, he'd harmed him more than any other. Perhaps that was a flimsy excuse on his part. He felt ready. He'd spent the better part of the last 3 months making his preparations. His forged transcripts, for which he had sacrificed a great deal of his allowance to obtain, had been sent off some time ago, and against all odds, he'd been accepted. He still remembered that night, tearing open the letter in the dark, flashlight in hand. Trembling fingers tearing open the letter of acceptance. He still had it tucked against his jacket, kept with him at all times lest he be discovered. And tonight, it would go with him out of Ansel. Sometimes John found himself wondered if he was quite right in the head. Then again, the same could be said of his family. You see, John Ark was special. Even among his sisters. It wasn't something he chose to be, mind you, it just happened. Each one of the Ark children was special in their own ways, special in ways chakra and semblances couldn't explain. Saffron was the eldest for a reason, because she was by far greatest of them, super strong, amazingly fast, and nigh on invulnerable. Big Sis could leap tall buildings in a single bound, take flight, even shoot lasers from her eyes. She was the living definition of a superhero, just don't let her catch you calling her that. Sable could walk through any solid surface, and what she couldn't walk through. She cut. She'd taken better to Mom's swordsmanship lessons than he ever had. Sabrina had her sealing tricks and chakra chains, to say nothing of her more eccentric techniques. Azula could conjure fire and lightning with a wave of her hands. Jean, well, he wasn't quite sure of her, but he was half convinced she was a saint. She loved her explosions, yet when she spoke, people listened. Her voice was even stronger than Mom's. Scary. Atlas had even gone so far as to offer her a scholarship once she'd completed her schooling in Ansel. Needless to say, she'd turned them down. Now that he thought about it, Ansel had been getting a lot of visitors lately. Probably nothing. He wasn't sure what to make of himself sometimes. Even if he took a hit, he knew he'd be able to heal. Nothing short of losing a limb would slow him down. He healed faster than anyone else in the family these days, faster even than Naruto himself. Of all the arcs, he was connected to one of the most powerful beings on Remnant. But that didn't make him arrogant. With great power came great responsibility, and he was determined to make his family proud. More than anything, he wanted to live up to Dad's legacy. After all, what better way to do so than to become a hunter? He took one last look at his family, watching the girls dog pile on Naruto. John's heart twitched. He wanted to tell them. He really did, but he was too afraid to broach the subject. And so he watched, even as they spat and squabbled with one another. Even as tears stung at his eyes. He refused to let them fall. Real men never cried, right? Heroes were supposed to be tough, and he couldn't be a hero if he let something like this break him. And so he watched, committing the scene to memory. It felt like saying goodbye. I'll miss you guys. 0.0.0.0. He packed his bags that night. In hindsight, it really wasn't that difficult to do, not when he'd already made most of his preparations. First came rations and water for the trek to Vale, then what little funds he'd managed to squirrel away from his allowance. Next came his armor, carefully concealed in a case, one which was in turn sealed away into a lone scroll on his personage for safekeeping. He cracked it open now in the darkness of his room, just to make sure it was still there. His armor was sleeker than what it might have been, a light embossed with red and gold, with bracers for his arms and shoulders, and 2 more for his knees. It was light armor, forged of chakra-folded steel, powerful to take a strike from an Ursa and still hold strong. It would do well enough in his pack if push came to shove. Best to hide it away for now. If he was caught wearing his armor in the middle of the night, well. He didn't want to be caught, period. Crocea Morse would do in a pinch. The case was closed and sealed back into the scroll. John looked left. John looked right, making certain no one was watching. John sniffled, just once, and scrubbed at his eyes. Then he opened his window and dove out. Alighting in a pointed crouch on the grass knoll outside, he took a moment to steady himself. He half expected a trap to go off. Dad was rather fond of those, or an alarm to sound. There would be an explosion of light or color and he'd be caught, dragged back into the house and made to explain himself. He expected, well, something. Anything. Nothing happened. Behind him the Ark household remained still and quiet in the night, utterly unaware of his subterfuge. It hurt, knowing he would be leaving all this behind, leaving with their disapproval, but it was something he had to do. He'd spawned and hidden enough shadow clones about the Ark household to distract everyone for a while, to maintain the illusion that he was still here. It might even fool them for a few days, until they found the note. He knew Dad would sniff him out sooner or later, but that wasn't the point. They didn't know which academy he was aiming for, and in that, he held the advantage. He just needed a head start. No point in putting it off any longer, then. The time was now. John hefted his supply, tensed his legs. Here goes. He ran. All the world turned to a blur before him as he shot forward, vaulting a fence, skirting the high wall of Ansel, then racing clear up when he was certain there were no guards to be found. He hit the trees and kept running, refusing to look back. If he did now, he would be undone. He just knew it, so he ran. And he ran, and ran some more. Leaving, until a shadow fell over him. He had half an instant's warning before he slammed into Saffron. She didn't budge an inch, not so he. The impact sent him stumbling back, only to be reeled in as she gripped him by the wrist. Blazing blue eyes met gentle cerulean. This, she hissed at him. This was your plan. I knew you were up to something, but were you seriously just going to run out on us in the middle of the night? Her fingers tightened around his wrist, grinding the bones of his arm together. Without even saying goodbye, John gulped a little. I'm sorry. You should be, mister. His muscles tensed in preparation for battle. It would be a losing one, he knew. He'd never been able to beat Saffron in a straight fight. She was the very definition of what he wanted to be, strong, brave, and unafraid to pick a fight for what she believed in. If she was standing before him now, his chances of escape were next to nil. Dad could take her, but he certainly couldn't. This is my life, sis. His voice warbled a bit in fear, but he stood fast. I have to do this. Her head bobbed in mild agreement. I know, I mean it. I won't let you stop me. Go right ahead. Don't make me open one of the 8 gates. Wait, what? He balked and edged back as her words caught up with his brain. You're letting me go. Did I stutter? She quirked a golden brow and planted a knuckled fist against one hip. You're not the only one in the family who dreams of the future, John. John felt his face burn with shame. No, of course he wasn't. It only made sense that his sisters might be chafing under Dad's rules. They'd always seemed so content, you know, happy to train their skills in secret and do as they pleased. And yet here his big sis was, letting him go. Foolish little brother. She flicked his forehead. I love you, but this is really reckless. Even for you. Quick as a flash she shot forward and pulled him into her arms. Just be careful, she whispered. This world isn't nice. You're really letting me go. Yup. She pulled back with a grin. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't let my baby brother forge his own destiny. So, where will you go? He'd given the matter no small amount of thought, but in the end, the choice was clear. Mistral was too far away to make any meaningful headway. Dad had painted a bad picture of Atlas, and Vacuo was, well, Vacuo. He would be a fool to go there. No, he'd made his decision long ago, even before he forged his transcripts. To Vale, he said at last. She quirked a brow. That close. If you're going to run away from home, at least make it count. Easy for you to say. You can take Dad in a fight. After all, you're invincible. Saffron her head to the side, reminding him of a lounging dragon regarding a small creature atop its scales. I'm really not. His left eye twitched. She really was. I watched Dad kick you through a mountain on that last vacation. You walked it off. Nah, I'm just sturdy. Not my point. She planted both hands on her hips. Do you want my help or not? Better that than having to fight her. Yes, there's a good little brother. She beamed and reached for him. Now hold tight. Wouldn't want to drop you, ya know. Come again. John balked as she swept him into her arms. Hold on to what? What are you doing? Giving you a head start, silly. I don't think that's a very good idea. His words trailed off into a startled shriek as his sister crouched down him and rocketed off into the night sky at speed. 0.0.0.0. Naruto found the note not 2 days later. 2 lines awaited him within. Quote. I'm sorry. It read out. I have to try. Stubborn boy. Juniper swore. Oh, I'll have his hide. 0.0.0.0. Beacon was amazing. Putting a near bout of airsickness aside, no vomit boy here, John found himself poleaxed by the sight before him. A yard that sprawled for miles and miles in every direction, resplendent with tall towers and splendid spires, it was everything he'd imagined and more. This was his future, assuming Dad didn't chase him down and drag him back by his short hairs. That was still a very real possibility here. Saf had dropped him off in Vale and all but sped back. He could only assume she'd have to suffer his ire as well. Really, he couldn't possibly thank her enough for helping. Maybe he'd get her a gift basket or something. Girls like those, right? All right. He went through a mental checklist. Don't show off too much, try not to attract action. You're a normal guy, normal knees. I can do this. He strode down the gangway, chin held high. People noticed and subconsciously made way for him. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. Dad had been right. Just a little confidence and people would part for you. THOOM. A mighty explosion shook the earth and rattled his ears. John whirled, fearing the worst. I can't do this. His first fear was for his father, that Naruto had tracked him to Beacon and come to hunt him down. But he found the space behind him quite bereft of any such blonde. Instead he espied a rather cross-looking girl in white berating another girl in red. By the sage he could hear those two from here. Really, they reminded him of his sisters. Sable and Sabrina were always squabbling about something or other. His brow furrowed at the memory, if only because it reminded him of home. They shouldn't be fighting at all. He took a tentative step forward. Someone bumped into him and nearly knocked him sprawling. I'm sorry. A soft, strangely familiar voice arose in his ears. Are you all right? His spine stiffened. This was it. His first real interaction with someone in Beacon. Play it cool. With exaggerated slowness, he pivoted in place, preparing what he hoped was a suitably impressive retort on his tongue. BWUH. Failure, thy name is John. Words abandoned him completely. Indeed, his mind faltered the moment he laid eyes on her. For this was most certainly a member of the fairer. Startling green orbs blinked back at him, framed by hair the color of blood and a smile so fragile he thought it might shatter at any moment. Made him want to give her a hug, you know. Bronze was her armor and she wore it well. She was also wearing a mask. Not an actual mask, but one of a different sort. Now, Naruto and Juniper hadn't raised a fool. John knew what girls wear. But this was the first time he'd met someone so, wow. She quirked a crimson brow at him. You do speak the common tongue, don't you? I speak, pretty girl. He babbled out. Another brow joined the first. Doe, foot, meat, mouth. You're a strange one. She smiled a little. Who are you? This was his chance. Well, the name's John Ark. Short, sweet, rolls off the tongue, ladies love it. He all but thrust his hand at her in a frantic attempt to salvage the situation. Just a normal guy. Added almost as an afterthought, nice to meet you, miss. Nice to see you again, said John's foot unto his mouth. Jade orbs flicked down to his hand. Back up to his face. Her lips parted, said something he didn't quite hear. After a moment's pause, the redhead seemed to recover her wits. Pyra. She reached out and clasped his hand at last, sounding strangely resigned. Pyra Nikos, she said as if he should recognize her. He didn't. Was that a bad thing? Ansel was a small town, and he didn't watch television all that much. Not when there was training to do, chores to be done, and sisters to corral. He felt a little guilty though. She was looking at him so expectantly, he had to say something. That's a nice name. Her eyes narrowed and for an awful moment John wondered if he'd stepped in it again. Girls got scary when they were angry. You don't know who I am. Should I? He shrugged helplessly. You're just a normal student. Like me, right? Her eyes widened. In hindsight, he had no way of knowing what he'd done, nor the switch he'd just flipped. How could he? He was just a simple country boy. No delusions of grandeur besides becoming a huntsman, but really, that didn't count, and no wild aspirations to be had here. Nope, not a one. Yes, she said after a moment's pause. Normal. She repeated the word once. That's all I am. Normal. Just like you. Her hand released his almost reluctantly, as though she were afraid he might evaporate into mist if she let go. When he didn't, she dared a tentative smile. It was nice to meet you, John. I'll see you later. Wait. Pyra jolted. Wanna be friends? He threw the words out almost desperately. It was a foolish thing to say and he regretted it almost immediately, but he was just so lost here. That's unexpected. She blinked, somewhat startled by his bold request. We barely even know one another. That wasn't a no. I mean, John scratched the back of his head. Well, my mom always says, strangers are just friends you haven't met yet, and I don't really know anyone else here. Really? Pyra tilted her head, regarding him anew. When she smiled again, this time, it felt genuine. I think I'd like that, John. Do you know your way to the auditorium? Not really. Here, she looped an arm in his. Allow me, I'll show you. Before he could even hope to protest, she strutted off, dragging him with her. He stumbled at first as her swaying hips brushed his, then matched her step. Had he just made a friend? He had. Nothing could keep him down now. He sauntered toward the stadium with a swagger in his step. John felt a dopey grin stretch across his face. I think I'm going to like Beacon. Yes, sir. Things were looking up for John Ark. Until, quite suddenly, up became down. 0.0.0.0. Are you kidding me? The pad beneath his feet erupted violently, catapulting him into the air at speed. What kind of initiation is this? Stupid headmaster. Stupid initiation. Stupid pad. A wild rush of wind whipped at his face like an angry Ursa, threatening to blind him completely as he spun helplessly in the air. Cheery eyes squinted against the gale to no avail at first. He couldn't make heads or tails of up or down. But that was a lot of green rushing up to him very feast. You can do this. Remember your training. Focus. Blue eyes lit with a faint spark of red. He reached back for his sheath and deployed it into a shield. Wind ripped at the sturdy metal barrier, bodily yanking it and him, backward by proxy. His fingers shrieked in protest, but his grip held and he bled off precious momentum. What was once a terminal fall merely became an uncontrolled one. The tree rushing at his face, however, didn't seem to care. Even slowed as he was, John could see what would happen next. Aura was all well and good, but if he hit that at this speed, he'd be a greasy red smear. A sweep of his arm brought his free hand back. Firm fingers clenched into a claw. Chakra swirled to life at his whim, forming a coruscating azure sphere within. Larger. He willed at it. Larger. His outstretched arm drilled into the tree like a falling meteor, boring through bark and sap alike. His eyes snapped shut against branches as they scraped at his face and rode the jutsu down, trusting in his aura reserves to win the day. And then, quite suddenly, he found himself alighting in a pointed crouch upon the forest floor. Perfect landing. He muttered to himself as he extinguished the jutsu. Now I just need to get a relic, find a partner, and get to the cliffs. Look out below. A crimson meteor crashed down beside him, causing the young man to jump. Somehow, he knew who he would find even before he turned about. Call it fate, call it destiny, call it just blind bloody luck, he had a feeling about this. He pivoted on one heel as the dust cleared. Sure enough, he recognized the young woman even now rising on bent knee. Pira Nikos beamed back him. Hello, John. The champion smiled then, a real, genuine smile that set his heart racing. Fancy meeting you here. A gloved fist planted itself on her hip. You wouldn't happen to have a partner now, would you? Her words drew a smile from him, and a laugh besides. He was dense, not blind. Hey, Pira, you have great timing. One objective down, 2 to go. Maybe, just maybe, this would work out. There was no way, just no conceivable way this could blow up in his face. 0.0.0.0. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Naruto took one look at the soldiers currently standing on his doorstep and genuinely considered slamming the door in the faces. Might be worth it. Then again, it might not. Not with his family at his back. They'd come knocking this morning with sound and aplomb, demanding to be seen. That alone was enough to put him off immediately. But the ultimatum they'd just given him. No, nope, not happening. Vine, was it? He dug a finger in his ear. You want me to come to Atlas? Nope. Respectfully, their spokesman continued, that wasn't meant to be a request. We've been watching you for some time now. Our country has need of you. Was that meant to intimidate him? Of course he'd been aware of them. He just didn't think they'd be so foolish as to actually try something. Not here. Not now. Not with his temper fraying as it was. It would be so easy to just reach out and give them a push, send them flying back the way they'd come. They were only a few specialists and a band of soldiers. No one had drawn their weapons, yet. They wouldn't if they knew what was good for them. Naruto drew himself up in the doorway, keeping himself between them and the girls. Their youngest shrank back behind Juniper's skirts. Jean mirrored them, blue eyes widened with fear. Daddy, what's wrong? Your family's with you. Vine leaned around him, his neutral expression never wavering for a moment. Good. They can come with you as well. Juniper absolutely hissed. We will go nowhere with you. Vine blinked. With all due respect, your compliance is not a factor here, ma'am. An awful pall fell over their group. Dumbass. Someone shouted from the back of the Atlesian entourage. Don't say it like that. You'll piss him off. Too late. Naruto exhaled slowly, his breath emerging as a thin plume of steam in the morning mist. First John runs off. Now this. The specialist stepped back half a pace. I'm afraid I must insist. Men, detain them. They weren't prepared for the laughter. I cannot believe this is happening again. Naruto tittered softly, bringing them up short. It's absurd. I just can't believe it. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Why do you keep doing the same thing expecting a different result? Isn't that the definition of insanity? Are you mad? You must be. His eyes were red now. Juniper realized, his body beginning to glow. You know, his voice deepened into a low snarl as black marks burnished across his now golden form. One day the last one of you Atlas idiots will ask me, Naruto, why did you wipe our continent off the map? His head rose, eyes slitted an intent like nothing Vine had ever seen. And do you know what I'll say? Juniper yanked Azula back. Naruto bared his teeth in a snarl. It's because you're all so rude. His fist slammed forward and the specialist crashed backward, bleeding from a dozen wounds.